What is a myth you are tired of hearing people think is true? Ancient healing techniques are better than modern medicine. As an archaeologist, this one makes me seethe. Ancient healing techniques that actually worked became modern medicine. You've got ghosts in your blood. Let's drill a hole in your skull to let them out. What's this nonsense about washing your hands before delivering a baby? I just did one 5 minutes ago. Let's do this. You ever hear about the health benefits of bloodletting? I pulled some leeches out of the swamp today. Yup, totally better. That if you get a raise or work too much overtime, it'll bump you up a tax bracket and you'll make less money overall. And before anyone says it, yes, I'm aware of benefit cliffs. And no, that's not what these people are talking about. The same people also think that a 70% tax on the ultra-wealthy means that the government takes 70% of all of their earnings. That's why certain politicians love the uneducated. They can make this relatable even though it certainly is not. The other big one that springs to mind is the whole, if you put a frog in cold water and very slowly raise the heat, the frog will let itself be boiled alive thing, a reference that gets used as a homily in any discussion about slow change. Yes, in 1869, renowned German psychologist Friedrich Goltz put a frog in a pot of water and slowly brought it to a boil, and the frog did not jump out. He was trying to determine if the frog had a soul, and I cannot stress this part enough. He took the frog's brain out first. Yeah, it was a dead frog. Kind of a major factor that gets lost in the pop culture version. He did the experiment again with a live frog, and brace yourself for a shocking twist. When the water got hot enough, the frog jumped out. How would putting a dead frog in slowly warming water determine if it had a soul? What else won't jump out of boiling water? A rock. Does a rock have a soul? No. So if a frog does not jump out of boiling water, it must be made of rocks, and therefore does not have a soul. We only use 10% of our brains. It's a popular fact that 90% of the brain is not used, and like most popular facts, it is wrong. It is used. One of its functions is to make the miraculous seem ordinary, to turn the unusual into the usual. Otherwise, human beings, faced with the daily wondrousness of everything, would go around wearing a stupid grin, saying, "Wow," a lot. Part of the brain exists to stop this from happening. Terry Pratchett, Small Gods. More of a misunderstanding than a myth, but a shocking number of people think that most people died around age 35 until the late 19th century or so. On the other hand, you also see a lot of people swing too far in the other direction and believe that early childhood mortality was the only thing bringing the average down. While that was a big factor, there were still a lot of other issues bringing down expected lifespan at any age, even if not nearly as much as you'd think just looking at life expectancy from birth. Yeah, this is something both sides are overlooking. If you pick a random ancient person's name and read about them, there's a good chance they lived to 65 and a good chance they died at 30 from a bar fight or infection or fever or some other issue. But stats show that their lifespan, while shorter, was not as bleak as people think. People really can not have any nuance between everyone lived just like today or better, or everyone lived to 30 and died from sudden death syndrome. A lot of diseases were less common, obesity-related, and a lot were more common, malnutrition or parasite-related. But also parts of the world still struggle similarly, like some parasites are still very common. And these days, they usually carry more diseases than back then, either from the warming world or just from international travel. Our ability to treat things is higher, but also we are more global, and more diseases have wider ranges. Their ability to treat injury was decreased, but their risk factors were all shuffled. Is driving in a car or controlling a mule more dangerous? Generally, they lived shorter lives than we do, but like 60 is shorter. We've added a good 15 years since then, but we haven't doubled our lifespan or anything crazy outside of extraordinary circumstances. There's also still room to improve in the future since industry also adds risk factors, like the plastic in our blood or the ridiculous, actually physically impossible in ancient times, amount of sugar hidden in everything. At one point, literal kings would conserve sugar. It's crazy to think the diabetes rate would be as high as it is today, for example. Nobody wants to think about it past current day is scientific utopia, or distant past is noble, savage utopia. That evolving necessarily means improving. Dodos had no natural predators, so they evolved to not have any real survival instincts. Then, when humans brought other animals to Mauritius, the dodos were easy pickings. That having a lot of sex makes a vagina loose, or that a virgin's vagina will mold itself to one particular penis. Yes, And the equally stupid idea that labia minora size has anything to do with how many sexual partners a woman has had. The idiotic logic that if a woman sleeps with multiple men, it makes her loose. Yet, if she sleeps with the same man over and over, no change. Make it make sense. There's someone out there for everyone. No, there isn't. Many people end up alone against their will. And if you aren't willing to work on yourself as a person, your chances are even lower of you finding someone who wants to be with you long term. So stop trying to find someone who will just accept you for you, and try to be the best version of you so someone can be proud to be with you instead. Too true. I am trying my best, but my older brother has heavily devolved into a stereotypical incel. I'm 25, currently single, however I have a high-paying job and am exercising more often as I do need to lose some weight TBH, currently down 10 lbs since I started taking it more seriously. My brother is 28. He is a virgin, has not held any job since last April, smokes pot multiple times a day, and has gained a ton of weight over the past year. He makes all kinds of terrible comments about women because right now, the way he is genuinely undesirable. If he keeps doing what he's done the past year, he's only going to get worse. He has also been in therapy with various practitioners over the last decade, since that's usually what gets suggested, that your blood is blue before it is oxygenated. I believed this for way too long just because of color coding in scientific art. I just never really thought about it closely until I mentioned it offhandedly in a conversation and got, rightfully, absolutely roasted by my mates. The best line is my then boyfriend gently asking, "So, why isn't blood purple when it comes out from being stabbed or injured?" That expired food suddenly becomes poisonous. Unless it's something that actively spoils, it's usually just fine to eat for a while after expiration, or the sell-by or best-by date. Things like sugar, salt, honey, those pretty much last forever as long as they are stored properly. ETA. I don't mess around with medications or seafood. Personally, I just check them to see if they look or smell fine. When I worked at a sushi place though, and people asked me how long they could keep it, I always pointed the expiration date out. If it was anything with fish, that was usually at 2 p.m. if it was made in the morning, and 10 p.m. if it was made in the afternoon. Sure, I always had leftovers past the expiration, but legally I cannot tell them otherwise, especially during summer. On the other hand, I've already had cheese go bad before the expiration date, so I usually rely on my senses more than the date. That you can disarm an attacker with a knife. Too many people believe this and get themselves killed. Even if you manage to disarm them, high chance that they manage to get you a few times already. Just run, only try disarming as a last resort. I often wear sunglasses in the winter, particularly while driving, because the sun is lower in the sky. Just before midday, it can be blinding. Then people ask, "Why are you wearing sunglasses? It's cold." We don't wear sunglasses because it's hot outside, people. If you go outside in the cold with wet hair, you'll get pneumonia. I've had it, and it was not because I went outside while it was cold with wet hair. I had it in the summer. As a kid, I used to run outside in the winter with wet hair so I wouldn't have to go to school the next day, and it never worked. The alpha myth is based on a misunderstanding of how wolf packs function. One of the researchers who wrote that retracted it. The International Wolf Center also constantly corrects people who visit. The moon landing was faked. Oh, we definitely landed on the moon later, but then? Impossible. I think the simplest proof that it happened was that the USSR didn't refute it. If America had faked it, the USSR would have been immediately telling everyone. Yeah, it's kind of funny how that mirror on the moon either shuts them up completely and forever, or they have some explanation for it. By the way, I haven't heard anybody say that they've landed on the moon since 1969. I've heard that they just have never done it. Yours is an interesting new twist. That matadors use red capes flags because it's the only color bulls can see, or that the color red makes them more angry. No, they're angry because they're being tortured and provoked. The hymen is a fleshy seal over the entrance of the vagina. If it's not there, the woman isn't a virgin. Also, if she doesn't bleed her first time having sex, then that means she's had sex before. Vitamin C helps either prevent or recover from the common cold. It's been well known by medical professionals and researchers that this isn't true for well over a decade, and people still believe it and buy useless vitamin C-infused treatments.